Hello everyone, welcome back to our discussions in values education, commonly known as Bible lessons. And for this week, we are going to have chapter 2, which is all about Barnabas. And our lesson will be surviving broken relationships. So in some way or another, we are all manipulators. When we say manipulators, that is an act of um, binding the will of other person to do what we tell them to do. So, unfortunately, that's part of our human nature. Sometimes our manipulation of others is done unconsciously, meaning you are not aware while you are doing it. But other times it's intentional, meaning you really tend to do it. So one of the popular methods of manipulation among adults and teens is the garbage can technique. To make the technique work to perfection, so an individual stores a lot of junk in the garbage for a future use. So when we say stores a lot of junk in the garbage can, that means that ikaw nga tao, somehow you are expecting that in the near future, you are going to have a misunderstanding, conflict, or whatever nga quarrel between these people. So, mas maayo na nga nanako daay nakastore nga mga ipang bato or akong ikabaw sa ani nila in order for them to back down. Then when something comes up that appears to be very minor issue, he or she takes the lid off of that garbage can and rummages through it to come up with something smelly to wave in the face of other person. So murara gud na siya, for example, o kanang nakay kaaway, imuha nga friend baka ha, somehow you are friend at this time, and then another time naamoy misunderstanding. He is pinpointing something wrong with you. And so, tungod kay naa kay gitagu-taguan with the garbage can, so you're going to say that, if ingana ko, so mas worse ka. So, kay ba na ako'y ebidensya ngayon anak ka. So, something like that. Usually, he calls to mind the area where the person will hurt the most. So, of course, kanang imuhang mga o sa uban pa na nga sinultihan na ako'y alas. So, of course, those nga mga things that you are keeping with yourself to throw back to that person who hurt you will certainly hurt him the most. This old junk smells so bad that the victim will often retreat and let the garbage thrower have his way. So, there are a number of factors that cause broken relationships. If you're going to look at the television nowadays, news probably, bisan asa nga platform, no, dili naman uso ang newspaper karon, printed nga mga articles, but anywhere sa mga media nga mga platform nga makita ninyo mga news, there are a lot of news of broken relationship. But garbage throwing, unkind words, gossip, criticism certainly ranks right at the top of the list. So, again, our manipulation of others is done unconsciously. Pwede ko na. For example, when a boyfriend and a girlfriend, no? For example lang, so the girlfriend wants the boyfriend to do all she wants him to do. And so, naay mga istorya nga, pag dili na nimo buhaton, dili jud ko nimo love. So like that. Or the other way, ang boy baka mo ingon ana sa iya nga girlfriend. So that is one way of manipulation. And certainly, that is part of our human nature. However, it does not have to be always like that. So, do you maintain a garbage can for personal use when needed? So, this form of manipulation breaks relationship. And when we do it, it does not please God. It dishonors the Lord. So, thought process. Broken relationship is when two or more people no longer share a friendship or desire to be in the other's company. So, mahitabo ang broken relationship kung ang duha ka tawo or more, so, dili man buot pasabot kung relationship, no? It's between persons of opposite nga, kaya na ang opposite nga gender. But it is a relation. When we talk about relationship, there are a lot of kind of relationship, like our relationship with our parents, anyone in the family or everyone in the family, friends. We have teachers, or we have barkada, or another nga mga people around you, or in your neighborhood. It's still a relationship. So, kana siya mahitabo ang broken relationship kung kani nga mga tao nga na-involve ani nga circle dili na ganahan nga unsay nga nani mag-share friendship, or dili na ko ganahan nga makita nimo, dili na ko ganahan makiguba nimo, so like that. So that is broken relationship. And our key verse is on Acts 15:39-40. Then the contention became so sharp that they parted from one another. And so Barnabas took Mark, but Paul chose Silas. So our lesson for our lessons for this chapter is focused or centered on a person that we can learn the value of surviving broken relationship. So, ato na siyang i-focus o ato mag-learn ta from the life of Barnabas. Barnabas is not a known figure, right? Probably, a lot of you, wala pa kailan ni Barnabas, because Barnabas is not like a famous na Bible character like David, Joseph, di ba? Mas mailhan mo sila, no? Like Paul, Peter, Mary, sa payuban. A lot more nga, ma-recognize niyo, siya dito, Daniel, siya dito sa Den of Lions, si Joseph, siya tong gibaligya sa iyang mga brothers, si Abraham, But Barnabas is not like that, dili kay siya known. However, we can learn a lot of things from the life of Barnabas. Last few weeks ago, so I told you to read about the background of Barnabas. So let's talk about it very quickly since you have read already the story about him. Okay? In Acts 4:36, it was said, Barnabas was a Levite who was first seen in Jerusalem. His name means son of encouragement. So do you know that in the Jewish tradition, the meaning of the name is very important. So they are hoping that this child would grow up into someone that their name represented too. So Barnabas was named by his parents as a son of encouragement. So let's see further whether Barnabas became that way. So next, in Acts 4:34-35 and 37, Barnabas was generous with his possession. So at this time, it was a situation in which a lot of their brethren, or a lot of the believers of the Lord are, in need. And so Barnabas was never holding back to give what he has in order to help these people. So he was generous with his possession. In Acts 9:26-27, Barnabas showed a kind spirit toward Paul and supported him before the apostles. If you know the background of Paul, Paul, di ba? Saul man na siya sa una, no? Was a Roman soldier. So kani si Saul, he was the one that executed Christians. So siya ni ang nag-persecute sa mga Christians that believes in Jesus Christ. However, one time in his life, God called him and he answered. So, naay time sa life ni Paul nga gitawag siya sa Ginoo. And so, Paul, yun siya, who are you, God? And so, iyaha nga after that encounter with God, personally, he devoted his life to the ministry of Jesus. And so, kani si Paul, pagbag-o pa ni siya nga um, paila as Christian, or the one nga nag-accept ni Jesus Christ sa iyang kinabuhi. So, of course, the apostles were doubtful whether, base no, napakaroon ingnon na ni si Paul para madakpan tang tanan. But only Barnabas showed a kind spirit. He believed that Paul was truly called by God. So, si Barnabas was told by God as well to support Paul, and Barnabas never failed God on this matter. He even supported him before the apostles. So, iyaha nga, kaya na ang gisuportaan si Paul para nga dili na siya maging at conflict with the apostles. So in Acts 11:21 to 24, Barnabas was godly in character. So makita na to diha that Barnabas was following the Lord with all his heart. He powerfully taught others about the Lord. So this does not mean that Barnabas wala siya sala, sinless. Okay? But we can see here that Barnabas is really trying his best, giving his best for God, who iyaha nga gi-recognize as the Lord of his life. So, si Barnabas, kita, while tao napata diri sa kalibutan, dili gyud na mahitabo nga maging sinless ta or wala na tay sala. So, but we can sin less. But pasabot, we are aware that what we are doing would please God or would dishonor Him. So, kung ikaw, maayo faithful ka nga follower ni Jesus, of course, you're going to choose the right thing, those things that you know will please Him. So, Barnabas was like that. So, ang iyaha nga ganahan ginabuhat is, he taught others about who the Lord is. In Acts 11:25 to 26, Barnabas sought Paul for the ministry and they worked together for a year. So si Barnabas, since siya ang mas una nga naging Christian ni Paul, si Paul mura gi-train niya for the ministry. So naging close sila and they worked together for a year. In Acts 13, 2 to 3, Barnabas, along with Paul, was called to conduct the first missionary journey. So, ano nga time, take note of the placement of the name. So, Barnabas, along with Paul. Diba nowadays, mas sikat si Paul, no, Apostle Paul, kaysa ni Barnabas. However, if you're going to look it back, sa previous nga mga panahon, so it was Barnabas who really mentored Paul. Okay? Even si Barnabas ang nagpakuyog ni Paul to conduct the first missionary journey. In Acts chapter 13, 42, 43, 49, and 50, the ministry of Paul and Barnabas was very successful. So they also suffered persecution together. So when we say persecution, they are suffering hardships, difficulties. They experience a lot of pain together for the ministry of God. So, ilahan na nag-go through together. Okay, so makita ninyo no nga, they are, mura na sila og best friend. So, dili gyud kay mura kay sila naman partner man sila in the ministry, so they are already good friends. In Acts chapter 14, 11 to 15, Barnabas may have been a very large man. So when in Lystra, Barnabas was thought to be the god Jupiter, and Paul was thought to be Mercury. So kani sila mga mythical gods man ni sila, no? But they resisted the people who wanted to worship them. Ngano man nga ilaha man nga gi-resist. Dahang mga tawang na pray sa ilaha even want to worship them because they are very good at what they do in the ministry. However, they resisted because they know that worship belongs only to God. only God is worthy of the worship of the people. And so they resisted because they love the Lord. They are not doing it for themselves, para mapasikat. So wala na nila buhata for that. But they do it for their love of the Lord. And so they resisted the worship of the people. Ingon sila, no, you should not worship us because we are just human like you. Okay? So, only God is worthy of our worship. So, in Acts 15:12 to 13, Barnabas and Paul championed the gospel to the Gentiles. When we say champion, ilahang na successfully declare to the Gentiles. When we say Gentiles, kani sila, mao ni ang mga people outside Israel. Because Israel is the chosen people of God. However, kaning mga kaning ministry nila ni Barnabas o ni Paul, ning gawa sila sa Israel ngadto sa mga tao nga wala pa nakaila sa Ginoo, mao na ilang giingon nga mga Gentiles. Okay? So, they successfully declared the gospel to them. And in Acts 36 to 40, this was the moment when Barnabas and Paul had a disagreement. Barnabas disagreed with Paul regarding taking John Mark on the second missionary journey. So, kani si John Mark is a young man nga ilang gi-mentor na sad. Syempre, they are not getting younger, so kisa man ang musunod nila pagkuan sa ministry. So, John Mark was one of the disciples of Barnabas and Paul. So, ilan na po nilang ipa-disciple para may motiwa sa ilang trabaho para sa Ginoo. And so, it happens that this John Mark, sa first missionary journey, gibiyaan ni John Mark sila ni Paul o ni Barnabas. Without any nga pagpananghin, he just left. And so, ningbalik niya at certain point, ibalik si John Mark sa ilaha, but Paul could not trust John Mark anymore. And so, morning nagka-disagreement sila ni Barnabas. However, Barnabas was very kind and never failed to encourage everyone, even those who made mistakes. He gave John Mark second chance. So, mo ni siya nga tayma nga kaya na ang si Barnabas iyaha nga gi kanang dala siya ang nagmentor ni John Mark. They parted ways with Paul, who took with him Silas, which is another nga apostle sa ilaha. So, wala na pasabot nga up to the end of the story. Wala na gyud sila nagkaistoryahan si Paul o Barnabas. At some point, these two restored the relationship they once have. However, there was a time in which they also went through the dilemma of broken relationship. So, ani nga time, in 2 Timothy 4:11, we can see that Barnabas was successful in restoring John Mark to the ministry. Nag-record na diha sa 2 Timothy 4:11 that the second chance given by Barnabas to John Mark was not wasted. John Mark became a focal person that served the Lord faithfully in the ministry at that time. So, makita nato ang positive nga result sa gibuhat ni Barnabas. So, this is not to, pag kuan ni Paul nga, kanang siya, dili maayo batasan si Paul, ha? But it is a proof that even these people, called apostles to God, they also experience the, ang pain of broken relationship, disagreements, because they are people like us. So, let's learn how are we going to handle broken relationship based on biblical perspective as we go on.